At Staples Business Advantage, our team of experts can help you find the breakroom products to satisfy everyone's preferences, while AI can
suggest popular items, monitor stock levels, optimize pricing, and automate reordering.
AI can do a lot of things.
But I can never know the taste of a truly great cup of coffee. Sigh.
But you also can't get hangry.
This is true.
At Staples Business Advantage, we help you select from 2,000 breakroom products, so you can be sure there's something for everyone.
Yum. Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Oh, man.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now only on A&E and watch next day on the A&E app.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, in 1997, a black teen was beaten into a coma by the son of a powerful Chicago union boss. So why did black leaders support the attacker? An investigative reporter looks at how the incident affected his community and changed his own life. We'll discuss the podcast, You Didn't See Nothin. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hey, Kevin.
It's so good to be back alive.
It's so good to be back alive and to get back and have you do all that snow blowing for us.
Toby just said there's going to be no more snow this year, so he knows something, right?
But there better not be, because I just gave the okay for Yardbird to deliver the rest of our new deck furniture.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that does it.
Yeah, it better not snow. It's all I got to say. And Yardbird, by the way, great company. I hope they sponsor our podcast someday. Just going to throw it out there.
Throw it out there. Like the hint water I'm about to drink.
Listen, we manifested that. I'm drinking some right now. It's delicious.
Can we get a Volvo? I want a Volvo next.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Welcome back, Laura.
Welcome, Rebecca. I should say thank you, Rebecca.
She forgot how to do the job.
I forgot how to do the job. No, I was going to say, somebody this week said to me, you do all these things. What's next? Are you going to be an Uber driver? And I'm like, I don't know. It's a possibility.
Hey, you better watch yourself, because Livy Burdett could jump in at any second and take the job from you.
She's pretty smart.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
She was pretty smart.
After she spilled all the tea about all your bad behaviors while we record.
I haven't listened, so I don't know.
Don't listen. People are like, you were really hard on Laura. It's like, you don't have to work with her.
I did see on Twitter that people were really upset about that.
No, they weren't. Only one person was, but it was mostly because in the after show, people were asking questions, and the questions were like, who is the hardest to edit? And it was Livy. Livy was like, Laura. But in the best way possible.
It had to do with cat noise.
It had to do with cat noises.
Oh, okay.
Purring.
All right.
Loquacious purring. You know, that kind of thing.
Random talking to people who aren't on the microphone.
I just, roll with it.
But we all know that you are one of my favorite people, Laura Bricker.
Thank you, Rebecca, and you are mine.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, the author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of the Strange Arrivals podcast, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, the wonderful Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca.
All right, so Kevin, this is obviously Monday's program.
Yeah.
What is happening on Thursday's podcast?
On Thursday, we're going to be talking about the podcast from Wondery, and novel it's called Stolen Hearts.
Can't wait for that one. All right, so we have an announcement to make.
Yeah, we want to congratulate our very own Toby Ball on the launch of Season 3 of Strange Arrivals. Woo! Congratulations, Toby.
Thank you. Yeah, it's finally seen the light of day.
Do you want to talk a little bit about it and maybe make some people want to listen? Plug a little?
Oh, I don't know. You don't have to listen. No. So
it's like, I got paid already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this season got a lot of cool things coming up. The first episode is dropped, and it's about a strange UFO case in Papua New Guinea back in the 50s, where 36 people saw over 3 days a craft hovering above the ocean. Next week, or this coming week, I guess, Wednesday, we're going to spend a few episodes looking at another thing that's kind of like that. It takes place in Zimbabwe at a sort of combined elementary and middle school, where 60 kids saw a craft. They didn't see it land. They just saw it, but then like beings sort of traipsing around. And then we kind of go from there. But anyway, so it's a lot of like really interesting, encounters. We'll be doing some alien abduction stuff a little bit later in the season.
Playing all the hits.
All the hits. So if you haven't heard Strange Arrivals before, there's 2 seasons already, and this is the 3rd season that just started.
How do you feel about the fact that our friend Payne Lindsay is coming out with a competing UFO podcast called High Strange?
High Strange? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
High Strange Arrivals. Hopefully there's some good synergy there.
Yes.
We'll get the UFO
promotion.
people out of the woodwork.
Cross promo the hell out of that.
I'd like to listen to Payne's as well.
Yeah. Seriously, get your people to reach their people and do some cross promos. You get all that audience.
There's something about alien gankers.
That's right.
I know. I saw that clip you guys did about the goose ganker, and I was like, I really kind of miss the goose ganker.
I do too. I do. Yeah.
Laura, you don't remember the clip from the original podcast where you talked about how Ken's cousin chopped the head off a goose and sent it to his girlfriend?
I don't, but I know which cousin that was. So. I suspect I know which cousin that was. So but I don't remember
that.
There's
more than one that it could be?
There's some interesting cousins in that family.
Wow.
Oh, jeez.
Wow. Well, all I will say before we start the podcast is stay tuned for the business section for some more exciting plugs, okay?
All right.
Just don't skip it. Don't skip the business section. All right. So, Kevin, I'm really excited to talk about what we're talking about on this podcast.
Me
So
too.
can we just get it started?
Do it.
All right. Leading off, let's drop that first clip right now.
In the vicious act that has gone to the heart of Chicago's deep racial divide.
This kind of savage, senseless assault strikes at the very heart of America's ideals.
In 1997, 13-year-old Lenard Clark rode his bike into a white Chicago neighborhood only to be jumped and beaten into a coma by a group of teens. One of them was the son of Frank Caruso, a union boss with reputed mob ties. The crime shook the black community and shocked the city.
Then, almost overnight, the news stories turned to racial reconciliation and forgiveness. This is a podcast about how that happened and how it changed my life. So brace yourself, because this shit is bananas.
As a young man, Yohance Lacour was puzzled by why some black community leaders rallied around Frank Jr., who was trying to mend his public image before trial. Now an investigative reporter, Lacour revisits the crime and its aftermath and reflects on how the incident affected his own life.
It's like they were saying, you didn't see nothing, move along. But I'm not gonna move along. I'm gonna be right here, standing in my rage, unreconciled.
From USG Audio and Invisible Institute comes the podcast, You Didn't See Nothin. Through the lens of his lived experience, Lacour probes the actions of those in power who stood behind a white assailant instead of his young black victim. And he asks why calls for racial reconciliation are not a two-way street. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from You Didn't See Nothin. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, Laura, as I said in the introduction, we are talking about somebody with true lived experience of this story. And I just want to mention, Yohance is exactly my age. I remember this story very well. And he is talking about it because he was there in the moment when this happened. How do you think that informs his experience telling his story, Laura Bricker?
Well, I think that he has a lot of credibility here because not only is he the person that was there to tell this story originally, he's somebody that knows the neighborhood, knows the streets, knows all the cast of characters and players, and also knows the uphill battle that he had to report this when this first happened back in 1997. So, I mean, I think, at the time he was, in his early 20s, he was selling like $10 bottles of weed. He was selling $10 bottles of weed, $10 bags of weed. He was living with his dad in South Side of Chicago. And you hear how he was spurred to action because what was a horrible situation, which was basically a hate crime, was immediately spun as this is an opportunity for racial reconciliation. And that motivated him to get out and tell the other story. So to have the perspective now 25 years later from him, who when he went in was extremely well positioned to tell the story, I think that really added another level of depth and understanding to this case, what has and hasn't happened since then. And just sort of, because I was thinking like, what would happen if this happened now? And I think that, he's the perfect person to tell that because he knows what happened then.
So Kevin, I will just throw something out there. I think this is one of the most creatively and beautifully produced podcasts I have ever heard. Full stop. Mm-hmm. The first few minutes of this podcast are incredible. Talk about that.
Yeah, I was like, after 3 minutes in, I'm like, wow, this is really good. And then after 10 minutes in, I was like so excited that we were going to be talking about this podcast. And I was like congratulating myself. Yes, I'm so glad I picked this. This is going to be a great discussion.
Congratulations to you on this podcast, Kevin.
Patting myself on the back.
You get all the credit for this.
Look, Yohance is incredible. He's like the emotional center of the podcast, obviously. And I'm like, I want to go have a beer with him, but I don't think I'm cool enough. And just like his storytelling is great. He's a great narrator. His voice is authentic in both his writing and in his delivery.
The way he weaves in his friends' interviews, just like so seamlessly.
Yeah, but I got to tell you from off the beginning, the story about him being in college and then the classmate who just said,
this white kid, another student, he stands up in front of everybody and he's like, if Europeans took over Africa and its resources, then that's just too bad because that's how land is acquired. And if Africans were enslaved and brought to America as slaves, that's just tough luck because that's how labor is acquired.
And then he says,
well, if I follow you to your car and I put you in your trunk and take your car, is it just too bad because that's how transportation is acquired?
That was like an incredible line. That is going to go down as one of the best vignettes in podcast history. He's just so great. And that has nothing yet to do with the real meat of the story yet. I was just blown away from jump.
But it's setting up character. It's setting up context. It's setting up a place and time. And it's setting up where he is coming from then and now.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. And Toby, we're talking about a journalist here who was a journalist then as a young person and is a journalist now, a younger person, I should say. He was in his 20s at the time. And we are having all these conversations right now about the role of journalism and how it's changing, right? We had this conversation with Bone Valley. We heard Gilbert King struggling with it and deciding like what, quote, conventions of journalism to sort of let go as he's telling Leo's story and trying to dig in there. And people with lived experience have been telling the powers that be in journalism for decades that the conventional structures of what has been taught about journalism do not work in getting to the truth. There's a strong case to be made in this podcast for that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you had a note about that as well.
Yeah, well, I think the first time we talked about it, I think it was largely you, was in the Trojan Horse affair. And I get it. I don't know if it worked perfectly in that case. In this case, yeah, I mean, it's clear, like, Yohance does not pull punches about where he stands on things. I think a lot of the energy of the podcast, comes from his, he's obviously, it's the anger around what happened and then what the ramifications were. And so he's pretty clear about who he feels are the good actors in this and the bad actors in this. And spoiler alert, it's the people who are preaching reconciliation just mere like hours or days after the event are not the good guys. So I kind of felt like this was a very good example because of his closeness to the situation. And if memory serves, he didn't know Lenard, but he talks about how almost immediately afterwards he gets a group of guys together and they're going out for revenge to beat the crap out of some people.
fuck that shit. We gotta get as many people as we can.
What's a proper response to something like this that's happening in our city?
I couldn't think of anything other than we gotta go over there.
Sometimes you gotta go to war to get peace.
And then after that, he becomes a reporter for Black Audience newspaper, and gets kind of frustrated with the limited reach that he has there. So yeah, I kind of feel this would be a very different podcast if it was on the one hand this and on the other hand this, right? I mean, he's got such a strong point of view, but doesn't lose the nuances, which I guess we'll talk about later. Given his strong feelings about these things, the other points of view are brought up, right? I mean, he lets that stuff come out, but you can tell how he feels about it, and he's not giving it the same weight as the people he feels are on the right side of things. So yeah, I just thought this was sort of the best of that kind of, it's not really advocacy, but it's sort of being clear-sighted about what's going on in what is sort of a highly charged but also nuanced situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's this thing where you can be a human being, but also tell the truth, right? And that's kind of what's happening here. I actually think the young journalist story is super interesting, Laura. I mean, we're talking about somebody who went to work for a super local publication and uncovered some really riveting stuff, actually found new facts, and woke up the next morning and was like, this is going to make national news. Like, the Chicago Tribune is going to pick up on my new facts, and, people are going to be calling me. And I imagine, this is how I imagine that little newspaper on Long Island must have felt when they discovered all that stuff about George Santos, that he was lying about all those things when he was running for office, and then nothing happened, like the North Shore Reader or whatever that paper was called, and nothing happened. And then after George Santos is elected, the New York Times writes a story. I imagine the reporters at local paper are like, what? We did this months ago.
Yeah.
But what did you think about that? Because it's this is a person who, and I think it's an incredible story that he tells, that journalism was going to be the career that he was hoping to do. He could only do it because he was also selling drugs to make money. And he was like, people are going to listen when I write this. And then they didn't.
Yeah, that's maddening because I definitely can relate to him as somebody that has spent many years working in a local journalist capacity. And they are the watchdogs that I think are more important sometimes than national journalists, because there's a lot of national media following things. In small communities with issues that come up, sometimes there isn't a local watchdog, and there will be a meeting or something where there's one person. And if your local journalist isn't there to be that watchdog, that information isn't going to come out and the public isn't going to be served. And so I felt his frustration because I was like, oh my God, this is seriously, you have this story. You're like, this is big. I've got this out. Now this is going to go even bigger. This is going to shine a light on it. And then they're like, nope. I definitely felt the frustration. But I think I come back to just the role of local journalism throughout the country, especially now as we're seeing resources cut for local journalism. I mean, there's been massive layoffs across the country recently in community newspapers. And, there's always going to be turning on your 6:30 news to see the nightly news, but there might not always be that local person there. And you as an everyday citizen want to know what's happening in your community, and you want to see change on that level. And I think I really respect that he was doing that.
Yeah, Laura, I think that you would agree that you could see why you probably do make more money selling drugs than being a journalist, right?
Especially oh my God, yes. Yeah. Oh God, there's no money in journalism. No money. What was he making, $25? Yeah.
Journalists don't know how to do business. So that's why I'm just going to say, let's do the business section.
Oh, Kevin.
Oh.
What a transition. Holy cow.
Wow, that was smooth.
I didn't even know that was coming.
That was so smooth.
I'm just going to sit back and enjoy. Maybe you are cool enough to have a beer with Yohance.
I hate stopping to talk about this podcast, but we must do some business. We're going to talk about what we have going on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll get the Crime Writers on After Show this week.
We're going to talk about the acquisition of In the Dark by The New Yorker. Yeah. Dying to talk to someone about it. May as well be you three.
And then we're also going to talk about our travels and Laura's travels and all the hijinks.
How we got kidnapped by some spring breakers.
How we got Jeez. We went to a hotel. It was like if STDs built a Disneyland resort. It was
That was like a Mayan temple.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Did you have to hose yourself down afterwards?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Oh.
Want to let patrons know, too, we're going to have a live Crime Writers On recording. You'll be able to go and watch the four of us record our upcoming show. This event's going to be on March 29th. You're going to hear us talking about the podcast, The No Good, Terribly Kind, Wonderful Lives, and Tragic Deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman.
Wow.
So that's your homework. You get to join us, watch us make all our mistakes, swear at one another, see how the raw dough looks before it's made into a nice...
Watch Laura talking to her cats.
Exactly. We also have Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. Last month, Toby and his guests discussed the book Tell Me Everything, and now he's got more homework for folks. Toby, what is the next book that you're going to be tackling on the Deep Dive?
The next book, and I'll tell you, we're going to be taping on April 4th. I haven't told Kevin this, but that's when we're doing it.
This doesn't count as a notification, by the way.
Yes, yeah, I'll make it official. We're going to be discussing The Evidence of Things Not Seen by James Baldwin.
Wow.
Which I didn't realize he'd written a book about the Atlanta child murders, but he did. So I'm excited to read that, and the panel is going to be Ronald Young Jr. And Shirley Laro. And Marsha Chatelain.
Oh my God.
I feel as though we're going to be talking about again in the next few minutes.
Marsha Chatelain. Where have we heard her before? All right.
Baby Marsha Chatelain.
Yeah. So I haven't started the book yet. I'm really looking forward to it. And, given who the guests are, it's going to be a great conversation.
If you join us on Patreon, you can get access to nearly 340 exclusive podcasts.
They just multiply every week.
No, so you were thinking about the time we said that there were 400 Crime Writers On episodes.
Nope, I'm thinking about when you said there were 200 things back there. It was like 4 weeks ago, and now there's 340.
Yeah, that's not how math works, but that's fine.
I feel like your memory changes more than Kevin's speaking.
That's right. They're tribbles.
Also, Rebecca, give you one chance here in the business section to plug the great stuff at New Hampshire Public Radio.
Couple things. Thank you to Sarah Carradine. You know why I owe you big time, right? Just want to throw that out there. Number 2, please catch up on Bear Brook Season 2. As of this dropping, Episode 5 is out. And I entreat you to stick around till Episode 8, which I think is one of the best podcast episodes I've ever heard in any series in my life. I'm not overselling it. I also really want you to listen to a new series that I actually worked on way more hands-on than Bear Brook. It's a 3-part series coming out from the show that I oversee called Outside In. Toby, you will enjoy it. It's about a feud inside a subculture. Ooh. It's called The Underdogs, and it is incredible. Kevin heard a few minutes of it today. Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy a few minutes you heard?
I did. I can tell you it's, without giving too much away, it has to do with a crime within the sled dog Iditarod race community.
Yes.
And about some dogs that were maybe abandoned by some scrupulous type. Anyway,
situation, but it's really about getting inside this incredibly interesting subculture that is very closed off because they don't talk to the media because they're very criticized by people a lot. It is a super duper interesting series, and I'm so proud of it. So proud of it. Please check out The Underdogs from Outside In, from NHPR. Just look for Outside In wherever you get your podcasts and follow it and listen to Underdogs. Episode 1 is out now. Episode 2 will be out Thursday. Check it out. I cannot be more proud of this if I tried.
And thus ends... Say it.
Thus ends the business section.
The business section. Fade that music out.
At Staples Business Advantage, our team of experts can help you find the breakroom products to satisfy everyone's preferences, while AI can
suggest popular items, monitor stock levels, optimize pricing, and automate reordering.
AI can do a lot of things.
But I can never know the taste of a truly great cup of coffee. Sigh.
But you also can't get hangry.
This is true.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations, plus our team's experience, to make stocking your team's breakroom easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
Toby Ball, one of the interesting themes of this podcast is how quickly, this is not unique to this story, but Yohance goes straight to it, that immediately after this beating, there isn't even a period where anger is allowed to foment for a few minutes before leaders of the community, leaders of the country, and then even leaders within the Black community that Lenard is a part of go to, let's forgive white people, let's reconcile, let's all be one with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation that he lays out. I think the sort of national thing, is, I guess, somewhat less surprising, unfortunately, that's always kind of the reaction. I think when he brings it down more to the Black community in Chicago, he's particularly talking about this guy, Reverend Martin, who was Harold Washington's, was the preacher at Harold Washington, who was the first Black mayor of Chicago's church. And then this guy, Aziel, who I guess was the head of the Black Israelites. Anyway, those two guys seem to really put a lot of their capital behind pushing this idea of reconciliation. They sort of buddy up with Frank Sr., the father of the kid who seems to be most in the frame for this beating. And then there's pushback, right? There's a whole bunch of people who say no. There's these really pretty crazy scenes where there's a group that's outside of Reverend Martin's church, like just yelling stuff at him.
Bomani's yelling at folks as they enter the church. You standing with white folks over in Bridgeport.
I don't care where you from.
The churchgoers ain't having it. At one point, there's pushing and shoving between the two groups. The cops show up.
And what it kind of comes down to is that Reverend Martin and this guy, Aziel, that they seem to sort of carry themselves more as politicians maybe than clergy. And that what they do is they see this beating as rather than being sort of a moral cause, as being kind of a political cause. And it leads them to think, we can get something out of this. Like what's happened to this kid, what's happened to Lenard has happened, right? There's no going back on that. So why don't we leverage this to get something? And the way to do that is to promote reconciliation. And Yohance and this other guy, Bomani, and a whole bunch of people. He's got the people in this, some very, very rich personalities. They're not having it. I mean, that's not the appropriate response. I mean, he puts forward that argument, but it's hard to listen to him talk about it without sort of agreeing with him that it's a little quick, right? You're a little bit quick to forgive and try and make nice. So yeah, I haven't really heard it quite this way. And I think it was very affecting. And it's something that I thought about a lot after I listened to that episode.
Yeah, one of the things, Rebecca, you said about how they frame racial reconciliation, I wouldn't say it was necessarily Black people go forgive white people. It's presented as both sides come together, which ends up being, okay, Black people, when are you going to forgive white people?
Yes.
And it's never, okay, white people, when are you going to reconcile, either engage with the Black community or take responsibility, anything like that. It's always just kind of a one-way street.
It's always Black people do the work.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Even though we're the ones who beat you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Toby, you're right. Lenard was 100% a political pawn in this, and that how it was seen to be advantageous. And his mother. But how I like about how the podcast was structured is that for the whole time I'm thinking, why? So they don't hit you. Yohance doesn't hit you with this fact right away. He gets you into like, okay, well, why is Frank being seen in church? Why is Frank Jr. being photographed in a magazine as quote unquote having a crush on the Reverend Star? Like, what the fuck is all this about? It isn't until later on where we hear from, or it's related, that what the clergyman thought was that Frank Caruso is a labor leader, and we can leverage this to get more people from the black community into organized labor.
Maybe,
or whatever. At least that was one of the stated things. I don't know if that really worked, but at least to me it was like, oh,
maybe that's
now I get why this is happening this way. And while it answers a question, it doesn't make it any less horrible.
No, and all I could think, Laura Bricker, is these parents. We hear tape of this kid who is one of the 4, probably. I mean, we hear witnesses say 4, right? At least 4 people beat this kid nearly to death. This kid, Frankie Jr., was the ringleader. We hear him on tape threaten a reporter. He's doing other behavior after this where he's like violent and awful. We hear him completely unrepentant after the beating. And his parents are on this constant PR tour. And like immediately going to churches, immediately doing whatever. And I am just like, it just seems to me to be so, and I'm sorry, I know that Yohance is so generous in the podcast to them in a way, which I appreciate. I appreciate that he's going to the community and talking to the white guy with the Black Lives Matter sign on his yard. I appreciate his openness and his generosity. All I could think about was that Frank Sr. and his wife were probably going home every night going like, I cannot believe we have to interact with these fucking people. Like, that's all I could imagine, even though it may not be true. I don't want to like put words in their mouth, but like their PR tour really grossed me out. I don't know. That's how I felt about it in my heart.
Yeah, well, it's a double standard. I mean, it's a double standard for white teenagers being accused of a crime versus black teenagers being accused of a crime, because just the sort of sense of entitlement and I don't know if entitlement's the right word, but this sort of like, oh, this is so out of character and this couldn't possibly be it because these students are like at a Catholic high school and, oh, this other one went to this like institute, and it was all very similar. Like, oh no, my kid's not like that. We're not racist. Oh, we wouldn't do that. If somebody was racist, we would call them out. It's not us. So it's like complete denial, complete double standard. And, if you look at it objectively, it's kind of hard to miss that approach.
Yeah.
It's like, it's right there in your face. I mean, it's like, remember, what was that guy that was like that awful rapist that like got off? Oh shit. The swimmer. That guy, fuck that guy. I hated that guy. It was like, oh no, like, no, he's not a rapist. Oh, he's got a swimming career or whatever. Woo, boo hoo for him. And it's like, no, that's a double standard because he's a white kid. So yeah, it was hard to listen to, Rebecca.
It was very hard for me. And actually it was really interesting to me to hear the media coverage that they, by the way, again, I cannot stress enough how beautifully produced this podcast is. Josh Block was from the CBC. We've actually talked about a couple of his podcasts on the show. He's now at USG Audio. I really think that whoever worked on this podcast and like let the sound of the podcast come through, weaving in even the media coverage of it at the time, and even like the whiteness of the NPR coverage versus the non-whiteness of some other coverage, but just the overall sort of whiteness of the media coverage generally. When I believe it was like Scott Simon, maybe like in the diner talking to like the white patron.
Oh, the white patron. What a fucking asshole.
He was like, I'm not racist, but
I'm not a racist, but why can't they be called a racist as well as we are in their feelings? Are you recording this? Holy God.
One of my favorite things in the podcast that I just want to point to, and this is like, again, pointing to the beautiful production of the podcast and Yohance's willingness to just let scenes be, because Toby, you pointed this out, instead of narration, instead of exposition, we're just going to get a scene, was when Yohance went to the Italian parade. And he says, I just want to get Italian people in their natural environments. And then who approaches him but Frank?
And he walks up and he's like, hey, Denzel Washington, can I get your autograph? And you get that a lot, don't you? And I look and I'm like, oh shit. And then he says, my name's Frank Caruso.
Like, what did you think of the way these scenes were produced? Because this isn't the only time he does this, but it's definitely one of the most interesting times that he does this.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. And it kind of shows that, I mean, he considers himself an ambassador for the community and shows his standing. And I think that's one of the things you kind of, as the season goes along, you realize that Frank Sr. is just not like some random guy in this neighborhood. Like, he's got a lot of clout, which is another kind of interesting sort of through line through this, is that the way different people have clout. There's like religious leaders, there's political leaders. He's like a union / potentially mob type guy. So that I thought was a very effective scene. I thought kind of a low key, like really funny scene was when he shows up. I think it's for the guy who is his editor at the newspaper, who he hasn't seen in a long time.
Yes.
And he shows up with like dinner and weed, and they sit down, and then after a while they're like, fuck it, we're not gonna do the interview now. We're just gonna hang out. We'll do the interview later, which I thought was hilarious.
Just like Madeline Barron does it.
But even the scene setting,
exactly.
even the scene setting with the apartment and like everything, it's perfect.
Yeah, the paintings and stuff. Yeah, so I thought I guess the way he deploys, like times when you're getting information, times when you're getting archival stuff, times when you just have these scenes and you're getting information just through the process of him hanging out with people or being in a situation or whatever. It keeps there's like a nice texture to it, I guess. It just seemed to flow really nicely.
Yeah, I thought Yohance's struggle with how to perceive Frank Sr. was really telling. First of all, I think Frank Jr., Frankie, I still think he's a piece of shit.
Yes.
Right? As a teenager, I feel like as an adult.
Agree.
He still is, and by the way, he has Junior, Frankie, but has way more mob connections, according to the newspapers, than I think they were comfortable putting in this podcast. However, and I can only go by what Yohance says about this, but that he says that when Frank met him at the St. Rocco feast, that he sounded like an ally.
They had an off-the-record conversation.
That he sounded like a guy who was doing the work, and then when you have that after all these years, he still is in touch with the people, he's still present in that community, even though it sounded like a naked PR push. Like, what the fuck do you do with that? That he could have certainly walked away from that years and years ago, and why is he still here? And it's not, Yohance is kind of like, I don't know how to deal with that. Is this sincere? Is it not? Is it something in between? Because if you're gonna have reconciliation and shit like that, and you're the white guy, you got to put the work in. Is he putting the work in? Who knows? Like, who knows? It is complicated, and that's what they are saying. And that is not subtle. That is like really deep and a good part of this podcast.
Listen, Yohance is very generous, and I don't. Who knows what Frank Sr. and his wife are doing? But we can't ignore the fact that a witness was murdered in this case.
Oh, that's a whole other fucking story. I'm not saying he's a saint.
And I'm not saying that Frank Sr. murdered this witness but we cannot ignore the fact that a witness was murdered in this case. And we cannot fact that other co-defendants were intimidated and changed their stories in this case. We cannot ignore those facts in this case that completely mitigated and helped Frankie Jr. ultimately, right? We cannot ignore those things.
No.
So, like, Frank's,
well, there was definitely a kind of a shit show clusterfuck at the end that resulted, like in the beginning. All these three bragged about it. Oh wait, only 2 people saw the attack. Oh wait, now only 1 can identify people. Oh wait, now it's like it just snowballs into a place of like witness tampering on steroids is what it is.
Murder,
for a defense investigator.
Murder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's really incredible. And this is also this incredible part that I just want to talk about just for a minute, where Yohance reflects, and this is section with Zakia, the woman who keeps calling into the radio station, where he reflects on his own role, and he talks about this balance that he does where it's like, I love it that this one kid immediately ratted on this other kid, but I hate snitches. And then he's always doing this tightrope thing. And then he reflects on his own role as a heroin dealer in the community and whether or not he was a sellout. There are so many moments like this where it's like, I'm going to tell you everything about myself, Not so that I'm insulating myself against criticism, but that's so I can just be honest with you about where I'm coming at with this story and why it's complicated for me.
Yeah, but he also deploys that strategically. When you say he says everything, he doesn't go and just sprouts out everything. When there are things that are, like you said, like about interrogations and taking the hit to go to jail and all that other stuff, he waits to bring that up where it means the most.
Yeah, we don't know everything. Yeah. We don't know that.
Then it has so much more impact.
We know he has a daughter, but that's not part of the narrative. Like when he had the daughter,
right.
It's like
we know he wears glasses.
Things come in like at the moments they matter. What were you going to say, Laura?
Oh, yeah. No, when you were saying it's really complicated, I'm like, it's just the cast of characters makes this so complicated. The mob people, the witness vanishing, the kid who's the mob boss son, and also the community of Bridgeport. Like, we haven't talked about that. And I think they do a really good job setting up Bridgeport as a community. And that was kind of, illuminating to me, that if you were Black, you knew you didn't go there.
Right.
Like, this was not a place that was welcoming to Black people. And the reputation was long established. It was a pretty much all white working middle class area.
Italians.
And mobsters. So I think there's a lot going on here in terms of the complexity of the issue that make it, that factor into what you were talking about.
I grew up in Long Island, as I've mentioned on the show, and I'm very familiar with Italian communities that are incredibly racist. Not necessarily all mobbed up, but there's a specific breed of diversity adjacent Italian communities that are very insular and extremely racist. And this all rang very true for me as somebody who is also like half Italian myself. And probably has relatives who talk exactly like this, who grew up very near where I grew up.
You mean Italians have special slurs that are just Italian?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, we have to talk about one last thing before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Our friend who shows up as a surprise in the final episode, baby Marcia Chatelain.
Holy crap. So this was my story. I was listening to this line. We were on the beach and I'm listening to this. Sounds like a flex. I'm listening to this, and the whole thing about here come the teenagers talking about it. When she introduces herself, 16-year-old Marcia Chatelain, I went, whoa.
You actually threw your headphones out of your
ears. You're not going to believe this.
Like, it's baby Marcia Chatelain.
And I want to text her. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, there may be more of her. Like, keep listening. But she had
last word of the podcast.
She did. She had like the thing that apparently resonated the most with those folks.
But the way Marsha articulated it hit me in a whole other way.
Black life is a series of negotiations that force us to evaluate what our life is worth.
Damn.
I thought, wow, it's not my lived experience. I can just try to be an ally. I'm imperfect in that way. But that spoke to me a lot, and I imagine it spoke to a lot of Black people, too.
At Staples Business Advantage, our experts can help you find furniture that fits any design and budget, while AI can
recommend products based on preferences, generate 3D models for visualization, and optimize space planning for office furniture.
Take advantage of our team's eye for style and design.
And my eye for, wait, I have no eyes. Only algorithms.
At Staples Business Advantage, furnishing your office is easy. And with the best warranty in the business, we're committed to you now and down the road.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast You Didn't See Nothin? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
Yeah, this is a thumbs up. You should absolutely check out this podcast. We listen to a lot of media about cultural issues, racial issues, criminal issues. This hits all three of those, and it is told by a narrator and investigative journalist, Yohance, who really has the reporting chops and the credibility and the background to tell this story. You know, he's been reporting on this since 1997. And I think it's really interesting to hear his initial account of what he was doing when this happened in 97, his looking back. And he's just got a really great conversational style as he goes out and talks to people. It's jam-packed with information, but in a way that's very conversational and easy to listen to and absorb. And I just think this is a really important podcast to listen to.
Toby Ball, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for You Didn't See Nothin?
I'm a big thumbs up on this. I just kind of felt like there was a lot to think about. Like after every episode, I'd kind of like have to contemplate a little bit about what he talked about. It's sort of complicated and nuanced, but Yohance is very like clear about what he believes about it and is able to get across, I think, very clearly, you know, what's happening, what compromises are being made or aren't being made, who's opposing things, how he feels about it. And he as a person, I thought was very compelling. We didn't even talk about some of that stuff during the main review. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this is a little bit different than other stuff that I think we've heard, and I can't recommend it enough. I really like this, and I assume that'll be in my top 2 or 3 at the end of the year.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, this is a pitch perfect podcast for me. It's important. It's engaging. The narrator, Yohance, is just such an intriguing, charismatic figure here, telling a fantastic story that even though he's not directly involved with what happened, he certainly brings alive the immediacy that event had on his life.
Changed his life, he says.
Changed his life. He's also very conversational. At one point, he did the recap by saying, here's what's happened so far, or something like that. And I was like, why the fuck doesn't everybody do it like that? That's so amazing. Why are we always like previously on? You know, why are we doing that? I just think it's great. I think that I can't believe it's March, and I think we've already heard 3 of what are going to be the top 10 podcasts of the year already. I don't see how we're going to forget this one. And it's good when a podcaster does what is essentially the story of his or her life. And then you're like disappointed that, oh man, they don't have a second life, isn't there? It's like how are you going to get a sequel to this? That was the best stuff. I just think Yohance is great. And if you're ever in New Hampshire, let's just go to a bar and I'll buy you a beer, but I'm not cool enough to hang with you.
Maybe come to our house and bring some weed and like not tape anything.
I would come to your house with some weed and not tape anything.
So yeah, I cannot underline this enough. This is one of the best podcasts I've ever heard. Full stop. We just talked about I'm Not a Monster season 2 a couple weeks ago, and I was like, this is maybe going to be in my top 2 podcasts of the year. I have just heard what I can't imagine a podcast topping this as my best podcast of the year. I mean, there might be one. I'm not going to I'm not going to close the door on the possibility. This podcast is extraordinary. It is one of the most creatively and beautifully produced, and I've never heard anything like it. I mean, and you know, for me, Kevin, whenever I hear something that's new that I've never heard anything like it before, like that excites me because everything sort of sounds the same after a while.
The memoir podcast has been done, but this isn't one where it's like, the most interesting thing about it was me.
Well, you also hear the thing that's been done before, but there's like, here's my friend so-and-so talking about whatever. It's not like that. It's like, he's talking about his friend, and then all of a sudden that person's just there. And it's just woven in so beautifully and so organically and not overused. And every episode, there's a brand new convention of using tape that I have never heard before. It's like every episode there's something new and creative. I am like, I don't know. I mean, I obviously know Josh Block and Josh Block's work. I don't know any of the other producers on this show. I have to wonder how much of it was the team just following Yohance's lead, because we know that Yohance is a great writer. We've heard that he's been a writer since he was a kid.
A playwright or something, you mentioned.
And just letting like the instincts that I think are there, like, because we hear that he's been working on this for a really long time, letting the production follow his writing instincts, I think was the right fucking thing to do. I've never heard anything like this before. I was there. I felt every beat of it. And frankly, like, I want everyone in America to listen to this podcast. It is so unbelievably important. The resonating message of this is the end, which is like that it is wrong to not let people of color sit in their anger for as long as they need to, and that's probably forever. Like, this is an incredible podcast. I can't give, if I had 8 thumbs, if I had 20 thumbs, that's how many thumbs I'd give up for this podcast. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime of
the week.
Wow, the crime of the week. A Chicago man is suing Buffalo Wild Wings, B-dubs. I'm so upset about this. He says the restaurant's boneless wings aren't made of wings. Oh, I agree with this. They're basically chicken nuggets. Okay, now I'm with this now. You can sue them for that. The plaintiff says their boneless wings are just white breast meat that's deep fried to appear to be a wing. Yeah, he's right. Eamon Halim says the public is being fooled. Although, as a B-dubs customer, I believe he's the only one who may have ever thought there were wings in the boneless wings. I agree with that, too. The chain restaurant, known for its plethora of televisions and other distractions that have maybe almost killed me, a person with ADHD, added boneless wings in 2003. At the time, the cost of real wings was going up, while the cost of breast meat was going down. They say the boneless wings are one of the most popular items on the menu. I have a theory about that, which I'll share with you in a few. Hallam says it's false advertising, and it's the customers who are getting boned. Panel, my question for all of you. Bone in, bone out. Ranch or blue cheese? Hot, medium, or mild? Carrot or celery? How do you order your wings? Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you.
Oh my God, that's so many questions. Bone out, I agree. It's not real chicken. It's like chicken product. Medium with a little spice, blue cheese, carrot sticks, and Caribbean jerk, because who doesn't love a good Caribbean jerk?
So you like the bone out?
I like the bone out, but I know that I'm not really eating chicken. I'm eating some sort of manufactured product.
Okay, as long as you acknowledge that. Tell you, what about you? Bone in, bone out, ranch or blue cheese, hot, medium, or mild flavor, carrot or celery, go.
Yeah, I'm from upstate New York, and the real crime here is the idea of a bone-out chicken.
Yes!
Yeah, so I could either go, like, I just get the traditional buffalo, and
Same.
I can either do medium or hot. It just kind of depends on the mood. Yeah, celery and blue cheese. If you have a choice, Marie's blue cheese, I think is the preferred. And what was the other thing you asked?
Toby, Kevin, I'm leaving you. I'm leaving you for Toby Ball immediately. Like, we are wing soulmates. I don't even need to answer this question. Wing soulmates. Yep. Kevin, what about you?
Well, I kind of going to go with bone out.
Good job, Kevin.
Prefer the ranch to the blue cheese.
Ew.
I'd get the celery stick instead of the carrot. And I guess between the mild and the medium, I think there's the spicy garlic, which is my.
It's not even a wing flavor.
It's my wing, Rebecca.
I will say,
jerk.
B-Dubs has a great rub called Desert Heat in addition to their delicious buffalo sauce. Toby, you ever go to B-Dubs? I recommend it. It's kind of good. They've got games. They got sports.
B-Dubs closed around us, and then they closed, and then they opened one like a mile away. I can't.
We've got one. Come over to where we live. All right. That's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, if folks want to berate you, but actually congratulate you for acknowledging that bone-out wings are not actually wings, how can they find you on social media?
They can find me at Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, if folks want to congratulate you on only eating wings the proper way, how can they find you on social media?
Have you ever seen a chicken with a wing that didn't have a bone? Yeah, they can find me at Toby Ball and H.
Okay, if people want to tell you how handsome you are, how can they find you on social media?
Oh, they can always do that at Kevin P. Flynn. And how cool I am?
And your new glasses?
Yeah, my new glasses. Anyway, yeah.
If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram and compliment me on my perfect taste in wings, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, and I encourage you to join our incredible community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page. Just go there, hit join the group. We'll let you in if you're not a jerk. Support the show at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You get the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our line editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this program is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, because that's how podcasting works. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
As the umpire, you get down behind the catcher, a lot of times umpire would put their hand on the catcher's back. I won't even fucking touch him.
But you do lean very close.
That's wise.
I do, yeah. I'm just like...
That's wise.
In crime media. At Staples Business Advantage, our team of experts can help you find the breakroom products to satisfy everyone's preferences, while AI can
suggest popular items, monitor stock levels, optimize pricing, and automate reordering.
AI can do a lot of things.
But I can never know the taste of a truly great cup of coffee. Sigh.
But you also can't get hangry.
This is true.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations, plus our team's experience, to make stocking your team's breakroom easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.